30
of
armed
some
agents.
30.
30, yes.
That's
We
because
had
they
the whole crew, just a house party. They had the marked FBI van, the bulletproof vest, the whole nine yards, really, at our suburban home in Brentwood, Tennessee. This was the Wednesday morning in our neighborhood. Suffice it to say, the HOA was not a fan of us after the fact. Understandable. But yes, so they conducted a raid on our house.
Hello, culminators. Thank you for joining us today. I am very happy to have Lauren Chen. No, not just any Lauren Chen, the Lauren Chen, as she is known on that X platform that we love so much. Lauren Chen, 633,000.7 followers. She is someone who has got something to say. She's been saying it for a while. And the amazing thing about Lauren Chen is that she is only 14 years old. Oh no, 32. But to me, right? Same thing. She's
Right. It's
achieved.
nice to hear that because I'm at an age where I'm starting to feel, I mean, like a grandmother around the young kids that are now,
Well,
on the internet. So,
I will agree that the difference between being married with children and married without children is the different. Married without children is still being a kid. It's
right, I
it's
would agree.
it's dating. It's dating where you absolutely get to sleep over and you don't have to explain to anyone. But with kids, it's a completely different feeling. So nice to see you, Lauren. It was so nice to see you reappear on X at the end of last year. Let's
Yeah.
talk about that. What happened with you? What's going on?
Oh
What's the
my,
story? Lauren and I just, we have been mutual followers for a long time. There was a little moment where things got a little hairy. Uh, but things got a little hairy for Lauren in general. And then I've asked her to come on and talk about that and educate everybody, including myself, about the situation.
right. Well, I mean, it is somewhat of a long story, so it's good that we, you
It's a long,
know,
this is a what
we
they
have
call
long
a
form
long form.
content.
That's right.
So I guess to start off with, if your audience is not familiar with me, I started off maybe around 10 years ago, actually, as a YouTuber, content creator.
At the age of
I've
two.
had, yes, exactly, straight from the womb, just in the podcast studio right away, which I think unironically is maybe happening for some kids now. But I've had shows with CRTV, then The Blaze, and I've also collaborated as a what did they call it? A contributor previously with TPUSA. But last year in September 2024, a day that will live in my household in infamy, sorry. It was a Wednesday and I was awoken at 7 a.m. by the FBI about to break down my door. They were conducting a raid on my house and we ended up managing to get to the door in time before they could actually break it down, but apparently they had been knocking. We hadn't come fast enough because we had been sleeping, and so they had the battering
Were
ram
you
out. They were
sleeping or
ready
were
to
you
go.
hiding your guns and explosives?
My human trafficking victims, getting them into the
What
basement,
was
making
so
sure.
Garland, the, what was his name?
Merrick
So
Garland.
so quickly how quickly we forget the
Oh,
theme
I'm
of
not going
that
to
year.
forget that name.
Merrick Garland, he loved him some early morning raids. But
He
again, it was
really
for the
did.
dangerous people like you and Roger Stone. I don't necessarily know if you want to be in the same, you know, thought as Roger Stone, a different concept of a person altogether. But early morning raid on your
Mhm.
household because
30
of
armed
some
agents.
30.
30, yes.
That's
We
because
had the whole crew, just a house party. They had the marked FBI van, the bulletproof vest, the whole nine yards, really, at our suburban home in Brentwood, Tennessee. This was the Wednesday morning in our neighborhood. Suffice it to say, the HOA was not a fan of us after the fact. Understandable. But yes, so they conducted a raid on our house. And now that it's all hindsight 2020, I see that people like Hassan Piker are being issued subpoenas by I think the DOJ for he actually went to Cuba So they're investigating that connection. I saw a lot of people freaking out on the left. How could they? He's in the media. They're issuing him a subpoena. This is a threat against the press, freedom of speech. Okay, a subpoena, by the way, is what you do if you're being nice. That's the polite option. I was not offered a subpoena. They executed a search warrant. They spent the next several hours tearing
Folks,
apart our house.
there's a lot of daylight between the subpoena and the 30 agents at the crack of dawn also.
Yes. Yes, if I were Hassan Piker, I would be saying thank you for the subpoena. How polite. Come in, have a coffee. We're best friends apparently because you've chosen to take this very light approach with me. But yes, I had never obviously been raided, had a search warrant. I mean, it was very uncomfortable. They're tearing apart, and I'm in my pajamas. They're searching everything in our house. I didn't, I think I actually think I offered the agents who were looking, they're like, do I offer you guys something to drink? Are you thirsty? Just because, I'm Canadian and that's polite. But yeah, so we were informed that there was that we were not charged with anything. They were clear about that, but we were informed that there was investigation into some people who were working in conjunction with our business. And we ran Tenant Media, which was basically an online network of independent content creators, and we were licensing content from them and putting it on our platform. We were working with people like Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, Lauren Southern, Taylor Hansen, and Matt Christensen. And so the FBI agents, who I now know said a lot of things that weren't true, but they said that they were investigating people who were associated with our company. And, basically they tried asking us questions. I said I would want to speak to a lawyer. They didn't listen, kept trying to ask us questions. So, over the next several hours, they're trying to talk to us about the people who are working with. We did not know a lot of the things that they were trying to get answers to. But they leave eventually, and we're kind of left in a daze because they've taken all of our electronics to search. And so we're kind of like cut off from everybody. And I remember the first thing we had to do after the FBI leaves is we actually had to go to Walmart and then AT&T to just get new phones because they
They
came at
showed you,
7.
did they show you warrants authorizing them to take that stuff? You asked for it and they showed it to you?
I'm not sure. I think they showed us something, like they flashed a paper and then they came in. And obviously the next time I'm raided by the FBI, knock on wood, I will do things a lot different. They asked us to open up all of our phones and our devices, which we did for them. I would not do that again. Yeah, exactly. Like now I look back like, oh, you sweet summer child. And they did not take our passports. And we asked them specifically, like, are we allowed to leave the country? Because we're Canadian. And once this happened, we were kind of like, we wanted to basically go home. And they said, oh, yeah, absolutely no problem. You guys have your passports. You're not being charged with anything. They were really clear about that.
This
But
was
anyway,
someone who wasn't charged with anything, people.
yeah,
Okay? This this would be outrageous if they had charged her with anything south of or north of, I suppose, literal insurrection or gun running. This family wasn't even charged. Just
right.
stick, as Claude would say, sit with that. Okay.
So yeah, we were not charged with anything. And at this point, we're just under the impression that there's an investigation going over with the people that we're working with. So we're just kind of like, okay, oh, that's, I guess, we're gonna have to figure things out. But we get our phones, go to Walmart, get everything sorted. So now we can actually talk to people again. And then my phone is automatically blowing up with numbers that I don't recognize texting me, numbers that I don't recognize calling me, because obviously this is a new phone. I'm not even linked into my Google account to see what the contacts are because I have two-step verification on everything and I need to be in one of my accounts does that make sense? Like to be able to log into anything that I own, I need to have a device that's already logged in because I have two-step verification and it needs to.
They took the computers from your house, the
Yeah.
laptops, everything.
So basically, my phone is blowing up. All of these people are calling and texting me. I don't know who they are because I don't have the contact information. But basically, everyone's asking, like, did you see what Merrick Garland said? Is this true, guys? What's going on? We look up on our phones. And apparently, during this time period where we've been raided and we've been trying to get our electronics sorted so we can be in touch with people, Merrick Garland, so the attorney general at the time himself personally, has delivered a press release essentially without actually saying it, but basically saying it, accusing us of trying to subvert the presidential election with our content, accusing it of being propaganda meant to sow division in America at the behest of a foreign government. And there was an indictment released of some of the people we were working with. So not us, not our company, but two people we were working with. And this indictment is actually 30 pages, which is, if you're not familiar with indictments, as I was not, had the good fortune of saying that. A 30-page indictment is not usual. They are usually much shorter than that. What was also strange about this indictment is that despite it being focused on two individuals who are not us, most of it was about us, but also had some crazy, crazy things in there that reading I just knew was not the case. So this is where we're at. We also find out that our bank accounts have actually been frozen. Keep in mind, we are told that they are frozen, not seized, frozen at this time. And so I guess, our number one priority is to try to find a lawyer, because, if the FBI raids your home, you're going to want a lawyer. If the attorney general is accusing you of trying to subvert an election, probably going to want a pretty good lawyer. So we start calling around, trying to find a lawyer who is familiar with the FBI, who, we see from the paper we were given that this is the Southern District, New York. And so I'm just calling blind different lawyers. I don't know. I have a contract lawyer for entertainment stuff. I have an immigration lawyer. I don't have a criminal defense attorney. I don't even know anybody that might be able to give me one. So I'm literally just randomly calling people, and it's kind of awkward. They say like, well, okay, what is this? Tell me about the case. It's like, well, I don't know if you're watching the news right now, but basically what's going on in the news is what we have to deal with. So eventually we're connected with a lawyer who happens to actually be James O'Keefe's lawyer. I didn't know that at the time. But he's basically like, okay, I don't think he'd ever handled a case like this. It was strange. We had to explain to him that we weren't charged with anything, but also this, it's a strange thing to be at the center, like at the Eye of Sauron, so to speak, but also not be charged with anything and just have to contend with an investigation that's highly publicized, but you're also in the media. As I'm calling, so this is the same day as I'm calling, trying to find a lawyer, I also get a call from the Blaze, and they tell me that my contract, like they are terminating me effective immediately. And
That's a very
which
Blaze
is
thing to do.
it is.
We
And
have a mutual friend who you've recently spoken with who has had similar experiences.
yes, and obviously that was bad news, not the worst news that I was dealing with at the time, but at the time we did have a contract, that I had months left that never got paid out. But they basically told me like this is untenable, and then and there. And we get in touch with our lawyer, and then
And
we're
that was
trying
based
to.
on, I keep interrupting you. I'm sorry.
No, 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 go ahead. Sorry. I'm all
That
over the
was
place with this story because there's so
okay.
much going on, but
And what they had told you was untenable was based on what Garland said,
yes.
and based not on the fact that you've been charged with anything, because you hadn't, but
No.
as you said, this 30-page indictment was all about you and your husband and your business, but not
But
about
not for
anything you
us.
had done. Right.
Yes, yes. And yeah, keep in mind at this point, this is still Wednesday. This has been my day so far. Woken up by the
Oh, this is
FBI
all on the first
raid.
day.
This is all on the first day, trying to call a
That's
lawyer,
quite a Wednesday.
see that
Okay.
this press conference has gone out, get fired immediately from the Blaze. Like I hadn't issued a statement or anything. This was literally just the same day that everything happened. And yeah, like immediately. No one has ever been fired faster than that. And we finally get in touch with a lawyer who seems like he understands kind of the realm that we operate in, digital media. He's familiar with the Southern District of New York, but then comes the issue of payment. Our bank account has been frozen. So we had two accounts with all of our money, and we can't access any of that right now. Lawyers are expensive, as I'm sure you know. And initially our lawyer was like, "Hang on, no, I'm familiar with you. Don't worry about it. We'll crowdfund don't worry about the retainer for now. He goes on social media, sees that everybody, not just the left, not just the media, but even conservative people are throwing me under the bus. And he calls me back and says, like, yeah, actually, everyone hates you. I'm going to need the money up front. And so, because he's just not confident that like our name is being so dragged through the mud, even with our big audience, he's just not confident that anybody is going to want to help us pay for this. So we have to ask our family for money, my in-laws, who I can never honestly repay. Sorry, just because like not only is this a lot of money, no promise that we will ever get it back for them. So we do manage to get him the money wired over,
Want to take a break?
which I think no, it's okay.
Okay.
I think it was 50,000 was our initial retainer that we had to borrow from our family. And yeah, so I mean at this time it's also my phone is exploding because people are like my address has been leaked online, which is, that basically if people want to find where you live, they can. Crazy people, especially who have a lot of time, are very good at that. So our address is leaked. We're getting death threats. And, we basically don't want to go back home at this point. So our plan is we're going to go stay with our family in Canada until we can sort this out, because we're also very cognizant of the fact that, we have absolutely no money as well. We won't be able to keep staying where we're staying. So our plan is just to go see our family in Florida, or sorry, in Canada. The FBI said that we could go, no problem. So we're driving up,
Let,
and then we
let,
get
let's
another call.
let's take a
Sorry, go
break.
ahead.
Let's take a breath. What is at this point? Have we passed into Thursday yet?
No, we have not.
Okay. So
This is
how would you describe the narrative that's going out about Lauren and Tennant?
I mean, right now, I'm not on social media a lot because I'm trying to figure out the lawyer. I'm like literally, I'm just scrambling trying to find some
Well,
legal
that was good
representation.
judgment
But
on your
from,
part. Okay.
but from, from what people are texting me, and I don't know, like there are a lot of people who reached out at the time that I didn't say thank you to reaching out and checking on me, and because I didn't know who it was. I didn't know, like there was a lot going on, and there are people who I really appreciate that was their first instinct. Let me check in with you. Let me see how you're doing, what's going on. But basically, the narrative was that we are Russian spies. We are Russian propagandists who have been trying to feed Kremlin talking points into our content in order to affect the election. And that so there's what the indictment said, which was bad, and then there's what the press was saying, which was even worse. So the indictment, it's focused on our company Tenet, which I was managing, but I wasn't a talent on there because I had a contract with Blaze, because I was affiliated with TPUSA. So I wasn't actually a content creator for Tenet. What the media now and what people are saying is that my own content is actually Russian propaganda as well. And if you read the indictment, which few people talking about the situation did, the examples they use, so they are trying to allege that Tenet was like basically Kremlin videos. Examples that they have in the indictment of that is that we shared a Tucker Carlson video where he went to a Russian grocery store. I don't know if you were familiar with that clip. It was
Yeah.
going viral at the time. We didn't have anything to do with sharing it, or sorry, creating it, but we did share it because it was topical. We did
What
that.
was your
We kind
relationship
of
with RT? What was your relationship with RT?
So
If you could say.
previously I had worked with RT above board. I'd done op-eds
Me
for their
too.
website. Yeah,
Me too.
I will say it would probably be convenient to say I would never work with RT. The terrible. I had never had an issue working with RT in terms of censorship or trying to, hey, say this, don't say this. And this was all before the Ukraine war when I was working with them. So it really was just
Right.
a regular contributorship. I did news hits for them talking about. I didn't really do foreign events, or sorry, international relations. I basically did the same things that I talk about now: culture stuff, things like crime, woke social justice issues, and but they were trying to allege that the content we had put out through Tenet, that this was all being guided by the Russian government. One of the examples they gave was, like I said, we shared the Tucker Carlson clip. We didn't produce it; we simply shared it. It was already going viral at the time, and they didn't include this in the indictment. But we did, when we shared it, include the fact that this was being labeled shilling. This was people were calling into question whether this was fair reporting on Tucker's part. So we were trying to give the whole picture when we were sharing it, either not just Tucker Carlson proves Mother Russia #1 or whatever people might assume from just reading the indictment. Another thing they used as proof that we were kind of pushing Kremlin talking points is there was a terrorist attack in Russia. I think over 100 people wounded, if not dead. This was several years ago, so I can't remember, but it was a serious attack.
The movie theater,
Um,
right?
yes, I think so. But this was basically, you remember that big attack,
Yes, it was absolutely awful. And
right?
there was no aspect of Russia being to blame for there. That was an absolute terrorist attack, and it was done by Chechnyan Muslims.
Right, right. And it wasn't like a military target or anything. These were just civilians that were killed. So we had asked at the time Benny Johnson if he wanted to cover it. That's literally what I said. Would you like to cover it? He said, sure. Never ended up covering it. He runs his own show, probably had stories he was more passionate about. That's totally fine. But they included the fact that I asked him to cover it as, again, proof that this was Russian propaganda. So there are basically these two examples over. I think we were in operation for about a year, put out hundreds of videos, all of that content, and this is what they're presenting as the smoking gun. Like, hey, this is Russian state TV, which I thought was pretty ridiculous. Because there's actually, even with that being cherry picked and trying to be presented as unfavorably toward us as possible, there's no actual content that we produced that resulted from that. There was no actual video that Benny ever did. Otherwise, you can guarantee they would have included it. The Tucker Carlson video was just something we shared. So this is basically why the FBI is running with the narrative that this is misinformation and all of these different things. And so, we're driving, we're getting closer to Canada, and that's when our lawyer calls us again. And he's like, are you guys going to Canada? And we're like, yes. Why? And we're kind of curious how he knows that. He's like, well, the feds are following you. They're keeping tabs on you. If you try to leave the country, they're going to arrest you. And I said, what do you mean? Like, they left us our passports. This is the FBI that we spoke to specifically. I said, they left us our passports. We asked them. They said there was no problem. They said there was a problem. He was like, yeah, but don't you know how this looks? He's talking with the DOJ now, not the FBI, and we haven't at this point heard anything from the DOJ. We've only heard things from the FBI. He says the DOJ, they're gonna think this is a sign that you're running, and then they're gonna arrest you. And I said, well, why is that? Because we had spoken to another lawyer as we were. This is all the same day, trying to find someone to work with. Another lawyer had said that, if there's an investigation, but you're in contact with the feds and they've given you permission to leave, it's okay. And he was like, yeah, but that's not what this is. I was like, but I assumed that the FBI that was them giving us permission. He was like, no, don't trust the FBI. They'll lie to your face. Like, the DOJ is pissed. You didn't get permission from them. They think that you're trying to run from something. And so we were like, okay. And so basically we turned back and we didn't really know what to do because we can't go back to our home because we don't think it's safe. And so we just end up renting this Airbnb in Pennsylvania in the Poconos, which I understand for some people is considered a vacation spot. For us, it has very bad connotations. So not the fondest memories for us in the Poconos. But yeah, so we just rent this random cabin and
That is so weird. In
spend the
other words,
night
so
there.
you're on your way to Canada and you have to stop wherever you are.
Mm-hmm.
So
Because we don't know
that's
where to go. We
between
don't know where to
Memphis
go.
and Canada. And I mean, look, I can understand the optics wise. They immediately fled the country, right? You're thinking, no, I fled homelessness.
Yes, I fled homelessness. And again, in my mind, because the FBI had said it was okay, to me, that was us having that conversation with the feds. Apparently, no. Apparently, the FBI is not the people who you want to talk to about that. That's the DOJ. We didn't know about that. I still, to this day, believe what the FBI told us was an attempt to basically entrap us to get us to leave so the DOJ would arrest us. I firmly 100% believe that. I can't prove anything, but I do believe that the FBI basically said again, this is all what I think. I can't prove anything. But I do think that the FBI, when they told us those things, they knew what they were doing. There was no mention of the threat of arrest or anything like that when we spoke. Obviously, we wouldn't have tried to leave. But yeah, we ended up just kind of staying where we were because we didn't know where to go. We didn't know what to do. We're my phone is still at this point throughout all of this blowing up with texts from random people, like news agencies. Another thing that I'm pretty sure the FBI did but cannot prove is that when the FBI left, I gave the agent my mother's phone number because I didn't have a phone when they were leaving because they were taking it. And so I figured, okay, well, if you need to get in touch with me, I'm going to be my mother, she'll be able to get a whole handle of me probably. I mean, he's the FBI. If he wanted to be able to contact me, I'm sure he would have found a way.
And
But
yet,
as soon as
and you're still being like the cooperative citizen.
that's what
Hey,
I
if you want to get
assumed.
in touch
Yeah.
with me, here's my mom's number. You're just being as cooperative as possible.
Right. I mean, I literally, we opened all of our electronics for them. And, we gave them their passwords. They asked, like, say, hey, open this. I said, okay, did it. I'm trying to be cooperative. And as soon as they leave, my mother, apparently, she started getting calls from the press as well about all of this. So someone got her, someone got her number really fast, is all I'm saying, to start to be able to call my family about this. And yeah, so basically that was it. We ended up, that was our first day. I don't think we slept at all those first 2 days. There was still this, anytime someone knocked on the door, it was like, does that knock sound federal? Like, and that continued, by the way, for months, being afraid when we hear the
What's
knock on the door that it's going to be FBI, open up.
what's the composition of your family at this point?
So I'm pregnant, and my husband is
Not
with
pregnant.
me. Not He's not pregnant, and we have our, I think she was 2 at that time, 2-year-old daughter. Yes.
How's she taking this experience?
She's very confused. We're trying, that's the thing, like dad's driving, I'm making all these calls. We're trying to keep things as normal as possible. Like, hey, like, do you want an apple slice? Meanwhile, I'm trying to get a federal lawyer to handle this. So obviously it's stressful for her. Um, yeah, and throughout, like, just the fact that, we had to kind of do this to her. We packed up, had to leave. We ended up staying a month there at that like random Airbnb because we didn't know anywhere where we could
And
go.
and you're using your mom's credit card or something? I mean, like, how
Yeah.
are you even?
And basically we are borrowing money from family. So we have the
You're the
50K
worst
that,
Russian spies ever.
yes, and
I mean,
not a
there's
great daughter-in-law, I have to say.
oh God forbid, don't say that about yourself. But you're supposed to have like money in tree trunks and pumpkins.
Yeah,
You
I mean,
know,
if we I guess we missed that day of spy school. Because yeah, we basically we had our credit cards that were still functional at the time, but then another issue that came about a few days after is that we started being debanked from everywhere. Um, so our bank accounts ended up getting closed, period. So that made even
which banks did
um
that to you?
US Bank, Wells Fargo, American Express, and TD. And actually, American Express is the worst. So, they give us the letter, we can no longer blah blah blah. And I said, okay, whatever. We had just paid, I think, $1,500 in kind of like fees for the coming year. And so I asked, like, can we at least get our, if you don't want to work with us, whatever, can we get our fees back? And they said no. And I said, okay, well, can you prorate a return? Like we paid for the year. We were with you for a month. Can we get a prorated return? And they also said no. So not only did they debank us, they also took our money.
That's
Like they
bad,
they
American Express. That's
Oh yeah,
bad.
so I'm furious. I'm furious at American Express to this day, just because there are all these weird things that happen as a result of this, where it's like this is such a weird way to be kicked when you're low. Like I already don't have any. Like they took hundreds of thousands of dollars from our accounts that are seized. Money, by the way, I will clarify that we had brought over from Canada before Tenet ever started. These were our savings that we had invested in the company ourselves, like our own money, and we have bank records that can prove that money we had just brought earlier that year over from Canada to the US to invest in our company, as well as we had, any payment that I had from the Blaze, from TPUSA, from my own YouTube channel. This was all going into this money because we were trying to build up our company. So that was all taken. Um, yeah, so it was not a good time. And so basically, uh, we had to drive from the Poconos to New York. Our lawyer's offices are in New York. Our mother-in-law was able to drive from Canada to help watch our daughter while we were doing, these meetings with our lawyer. And then, obviously I'm not working anymore. And our lawyer basically advises us to keep our mouths shut until everything is sorted. He's very concerned that if we piss off the feds in any way, they will try to charge us with something. And he's a pragmatist and a realist. He said basically like a grand jury, they'll indict a ham sandwich, doesn't matter. It's like, yes, what's going on is bullshit, but people go to jail for bullshit. And so he realistic in telling us you don't want to try to tempt them to charge you. And he's also James O'Keefe's lawyer. Like I mentioned, he'll say like James O'Keefe will be the type of person who'll be like, yeah, like charge me, take me to court. I want to prove this. And I was very upfront from the start. I was like, I don't have any money and I'm pregnant, so that's not me. Like
And you're not
I kind of
James, who's a lunatic. He
right,
goes for that.
right.
That's his thing. That's his act.
That's not me. Like I never like I've had two tickets my whole life just for like, and I still think actually both of those were frankly unfair. I contest them, but so
They
yeah,
are
this is
unfair.
not me.
People who look like you should not ever get a ticket. You obviously, you
It's
know.
Asian discrimination. Although unironically, one of the tickets I got in Quebec was for running a yellow light, which apparently is a thing there. So anyway, so yeah, I'm not willing to try to, again, like I'm 4 months pregnant at this point. I'm not willing to put like I don't have the money to go to court, right? We've already had to put up $50,000. We're not even charged with anything yet.
Right.
And just based on we were the number one case at that time, the SDNY is like down my lawyers' throats. They're like emailing and texting each other Saturday at midnight. That $50,000 did not last long. It wasn't long before we needed another $50,000 and had to ask for that. And again, we've still not been charged with anything. And so the media pieces are now swirling. This is now international news. And basically every contract I have at this point, Blaze was the fastest, but no one wants to work with me at this point. So like there's no point trying to like it's done and I can't even come out. My lawyer is very concerned about rocking the boat because he understands the optics of this. This is basically what they want. This is like a September surprise before the election. He's saying wait until the election is over, the investigation is closed, then, it will be a lot less politically charged if you say something. And so, we're kind of watching the election unfold and we're wondering, like, does this election actually matter for us? I mean, is this the state of our case where we're actually trying to hope for a particular political outcome in order for the things to change? But the
That sounds
strange
like
thing
a
is,
problem. That sounds like a political, cultural, moral problem.
right, right. And I mean, ironically enough, we didn't end up hearing from the feds after like November, like September, kind of in October, our lawyers like on with them. They're ringing up our hours. And by like November, even before the election, it seems to us like things are basically like we don't really know what's going on anymore. And there are still the odd news piece about us. And my dad's like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And I tell him, like, Dad, these people don't know what's going on. I don't even know what's going on. So just ignore them. Um, and so we're put in this weird limbo now where eventually my lawyer stops hearing from the feds entirely. And this, then the election happens. There's still no update. And then December, and then January, and then February. And I go back to my lawyer and I said, like, has this ever happened? Have they contacted you? Have they said it's over? What's going on? Or like, and he says, like, this has really never happened to me. He said, like, I'm reluctant to reach back out for them. Maybe they've just forgotten about you, and that's great. And I say, under certain circumstances, yes, but I did say, like, remember, I'm in the media. It's not like I could just quietly go back to my 9 to 5. My job was content creation. So was my husband. He was in media too. We've been smeared as Russian spies. What's like we can't go back to, we can't just start posting videos again like nothing happened. And also, right now we're still under the assumption that our bank accounts had just been frozen pending the investigation. And so, my lawyer says, all right, give it a few more months. Let's see what happens, and then I'll reach out to them. So it's finally April, I think, when he reaches out to them to be like, hey, what's going on? We haven't heard from you. What's happening? And that's when he hears from someone at the DOJ that, oh yeah, the investigation is closed. It's
Oh yeah.
over,
Oh
no
yeah.
charges.
Oh yeah.
And they
It-
they just hadn't told us that.
which they don't have
And
to do, which they
right,
literally don't have to do. They don't have to
right,
do
they
they,
don't have to
they
do.
it was a courtesy that they even answered his question.
And so
And this
like
is, of
at
course, the
first,
Southern
like
District of New York. I can tell you, I practiced there for many, many years. The attitude there of people who get checks from the United States government, whether they're wearing robes or flashing badges, is its own category. Let's put it that way.
right. I mean, that seemed to be my experience for sure. And so we had a little celebration. Yay, like at least we know like the sort of Damocles is no longer right above us. Okay, this is good news. We've been under the impression that like we've under active investigation all this time. We had no idea what was going on. So they say it's over. Nothing's happened. There's been
Never
no
mind.
updates.
In other words, it was just never mind.
It would, yeah, basically never mind. And so, but after that, what I asked my lawyer is like, okay, well, I mean, can we get our electronics back? Because this was like all of our like I was still at that point using the $50 phone that we had bought at Walmart, which to be fair is fairly good for a $50 phone, but surprisingly good actually. But still, like I want my phone, I want my laptop, I have like, can I get all my stuff back? He's like, okay, I can ask that. And also, like, what about the money? And he's like, yeah, you should be able to get that like I don't
Your
want to
money. We're talking about
my money.
your money.
Yes, my money. My money we had brought from Canada, my money we had earned from the Blaze from TPUSA. I said, "Can we get our money back?" He said, "Yeah, you should be able to. I'm sure that'll be fine. Let me just like wait a little bit, then I'll bring it up." And I also said like, "Well, are they they gave a press release with all of these allegations against us. Are they going to do another press release saying that it's over and it's closed?" And he says, "I don't think they're going to do that." I was like, "Okay, but can we have something from them? Because right now, the last thing anyone has heard, I'm basically public enemy number one. There's rumors that I'm in Guantanamo Bay, that I've been deported, all those things. Like, are because of what they've said. My YouTube channel was deleted because of what they said. Can we get anything from them? At least clarifying that this is over, no charges for me." He's like, okay, let me ask. So a few weeks go by. He gets in touch with them. They agree to give back the electronics. So that's good. Not no to everything else. No to getting our money back. No to any type of closure that I could bring to banks to let them know it's okay to bank with me, to YouTube to let them know there's nothing legally saying I shouldn't have a channel and this investigation went nowhere.
And this is the better
They,
part of a year into the Trump administration now.
yes,
He
yes.
won the election. He's supposedly running the Justice Department. The heat is off, and yet you are still being treated like a criminal. And what's their explanation for why they're going to keep your money?
Basically FU from what I understand. So this is the Southern District specifically that is doing this. And the Southern District, like the person who was in charge of the investigation under Biden is the same person we're speaking to now. This person has not changed. Even though we're under the Trump administration, it is still this person who has made it frankly very clear that the process is the punishment. Like there were several things along the way that they could have done to make this a little easier for us. We asked when our money was seized, can we take some of it and put it toward legal representation for the company and myself? And according to my lawyer, you'd probably know better than me at this. According to my lawyer, sometimes they do allow that for you to access seized funds to pay for legal representation. We were told absolutely not, which is why we had to borrow money. Like we could have paid for our own lawyer if we were allowed to have our funds. We wouldn't have needed to borrow anything, including like to live and stuff like that. So no to the money, which is also maddening because apparently my lawyer was also under the impression that this was just frozen and not seized because if they are doing this like forfeiture, the proper protocol from what I understand is they're supposed to give you written notice that this is being seized and then you have a certain time frame to contest that. We never received anything like that. No notice, no documentation saying, "Hey, we're seizing it," which is why we were all, my lawyer included, under the impression that this was just frozen pending the investigation. But now we're told no, it's forfeited, not getting it back. We were never given proper notice of that and the ability to contest it. And now it's, I suppose, what, too late. And so my lawyer, again, with this, he's a pragmatist. He said, like, yeah, your option is basically to try to take the government to court. But he also said, considering how much money you could spend doing that, and there's no guarantee of getting it back, he says, I don't recommend you doing that because you could just end up in the hole, a few $100,000 more. So, which is why we haven't pursued that. Frankly, we just can't afford it with no guarantee. We're still trying to get in touch with somebody at the Justice Department. It seems a little bit of a bad system where they can take your money, not charge you with anything, but then if you want it back, then you actually need to go to court. I don't want to have to go to court at all. But also, there are other things with our. I'm on a visa because I'm Canadian, and so I was a work visa. There were rumors that it was my work visa was revoked. That's not true. That's the whole legal process that they would have had to do. They didn't do anything like that. Like everything that's happened to us has been extrajudicial. I simply wasn't allowed, I wasn't able to work. And so forth. It expired. The Justice Department, if they feel like it, they're able to help with issues like that. Again, we got a big fat no. But the Justice Department did say that if I were to remain illegally, they would not move on deporting me, which again feels like more entrapment. Not like I don't want to say somewhere illegally at all, but especially not for, just with the word of people who kind of seem like they want to charge me at the first chance they get. So basically, this was April. And we were given no help. And so that's kind of when behind the scenes, we started trying to reach out to people, see if we could get some of this resolved, maybe further up the chain, if the Southern District doesn't want to help us, maybe someone in DC can. And so we start trying to reach out to contacts. But the thing is, when the last anyone has heard you were a Russian spy, no one really wants to help you. And so that was unfruitful. And then in July was like, I guess, the next kick in the pants. We had resubmitted independently by ourselves, like a visa renewal application. And my immigration attorney, this is on them, they dropped the ball. Apparently, it never went through. And so we got a call like a Thursday that by Wednesday we needed to be out of the country or else we would be in overstay, which I didn't want to be. So then now in July, we have this whole other I need to pack up and leave the country, and I don't know when or if I'll be able to get back. So we spend the next 6 months in Asia and, still trying to, from a distance, work things out, see if we can talk to anybody who might be able to help with the money, who might be able to help with, some sort of closure to the case publicly. And it doesn't happen until September, finally, like 1 year after everything happened. We just go public. And my lawyer's like, if you piss them off, they could always reopen the investigation. But I like at this point, it's just that we had no choice. Like we wanted to come back with everything solved, wrapped up in a nice little bow, but we now understand like that, even that is the closure is a courtesy that, like you said, the DOJ is under no obligation to give you.
And that's where you are now.
And that's where I am now. Yeah.
So why do you think they did this to you?
I mean, from what I can tell, we were under investigation like September, probably for at least a year. I don't think the timing of the investigation or the way that it was presented was a coincidence. I think that it's one thing like, hey, we want to investigate these wire transfers. That's a financial investigation. Go for it. Sure. They very specifically and publicly portrayed this investigation and Tenet as a foreign op, as propaganda, as misinformation, which again, we were a licensing company. All of our talent, they handled their own content. We did not get final say or approval. We did not put out talking points. This investigation was not presented as, hey, we think, we're looking into this wire fraud. Because these people don't seem to be who they say they are. This was not how the public saw the case. This was not how the case was presented. I think they were very conscious of trying to spin the narrative where people like Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, and others in independent conservative media, they are specifically supporting President Trump because a foreign country is paying them to do so, which again is absolutely false, totally untrue. But this was the narrative that all of the media went with, that if you read the indictment, that is what they are going with. And yeah, I think it was very easy for them because you have a media that wants to play along with it, that doesn't ask questions, to kind of spin it this way. I think at best, the most honest reporting I saw that actually acknowledged that there were no talking points given, called our content creators useful idiots, as if their content and opinions are somehow wrong, just because of this investigation, as if they weren't sincerely held, as if they don't represent the views of like millions and millions of people. So, I mean, to this day, that's what I think it was. And also, we didn't even get into this, and I'm sorry this is such a long story and topic, but
I'm not. I'm
this,
not. I think this everything has to be heard.
yeah,
This is. I mean, look, what is really gets under not it gets under my skin, but really burns me is we understand that Merrick Garland ran a corrupt enterprise known as the Department of Justice. And you've already heard my opinion of the Southern District of New York Prosecutor's Office. But 2 years into the Trump administration, they haven't done anything for you. No one.
right. And we've tried reaching out, would still be very grateful for any help possible. I have previously spoken with Ed Martin, who is the pardon attorney, but and he's wonderful. But the problem is that I've not actually been convicted of anything.
Or
And
even charged.
so, yeah, not even charged. So what I don't need is a pardon. And from what I understand, there are so many other people who have been through what I've been through, but in some cases worse as well, because of this weaponized DOJ, who are all trying to get help, who are all trying to get attention. And now the people who have come in, they're faced with, hundreds, if not thousands of emails, people saying, "Hey, help me. This happened, this happened, this happened." Everyone's trying to get help. There are so many people who have spoken, even in conservative media, right? You have people like Owen Schroyer, who actually ended up going to prison. He was sentenced with something, right? You have people like Douglas Mackey, who actually again was not just charged but also convicted. No, not to mention what all of the January 6 people have gone through. So, like, I think my story is terrible, but at least
At least you weren't in
I was.
prison.
At least I wasn't in prison, pregnant, or taken from my newborn. Is kind of the silver lining that we've always held on to, which a lot of these other people did not get.
And now you're rebuilding.
Yeah. Now, I'm still not on YouTube, but
Because you're
I'm
still
on
anathema.
X. Yes, yes, I am, which, hey, is also the name of my show. Now I stream on Twitch, which is kind of like one of the biggest platforms. It's really only YouTube that kicked me off. I'm still on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. But another thing is also that YouTube channel is gone, and my content with the Blaze, that's all been scrubbed. You can't find my old content anymore.
How
They took it all
shameful.
down.
How shameful. My goodness. Well, Lauren, I'm glad we had a chance to have this little chat. I'm sorry that we had to have this little chat.
Well, thank you for having me. I mean, honestly, like, I really do appreciate it, because I do know that anytime someone speaks to me, they still, I mean, your comments might get flooded with like Russian propaganda, yada, yada, and all that. And, I recognize that because I'm so toxic, that also potentially touches people that I interact with. So I mean it when I say I appreciate you giving me the platform.
Well, you and I spoke yesterday, and I also told you, well, there was around the time before this all blew up, you got kind of involved in the Israel Gaza business, and
Mhm.
it got a little tense. And you said something very interesting to be at that time about what explaining the then and the now on that topic.
Yeah.
Let's at
Well,
least avoid those comments.
right. Well, so, as we know, I think October 7th, 2023, day that I think a lot of people are not going to forget. Following that, I think it was a unique experience for a lot of people, myself included, because this was like the first time where you're seeing war broadcast in real time on your timeline. Um, so that I think was a very emotional time for a lot of people, seeing carnage that has been happening on both sides forever, but not the average person doesn't see it, you know. So people are seeing what happened on October 7th, and they're furious, they're outraged. Understandably, people are seeing, specifically when it comes to like the children, what's happening in Gaza as well, with those casualties. And
Or at
it's
least
just,
the depiction of what you're seeing. In other words, regardless of its of and there are accusations going in both directions about what's been
Right.
staged, but you're having the psychological experience of being exposed to stuff that someone
Right,
your
which I
age.
think which is why people share it, right? Let's be real. That's why they share it. Um yeah, that's a maddening position for people to be in. When you're confronted with the score on your phone and you feel like you can't do anything to stop it, and yeah, like I said, it's an emotional thing that, like, I don't think there's another way to try and explain that, other than it's emotional, it's maddening. And so feeling very, very frustrated. And I've always been I'm not a libertarian, but I've always been more libertarian when it comes to like foreign policy, government spending on military, things like that. Um, and so, yeah, I was very critical, and I've been critical previously, in things like Afghanistan and Iraq. This felt like a new iteration of that. But then, kind of like when everything happened with me, I took I was not on social media, which I think was really good for me, because there were times, and I know other people felt like this too, seeing all of the footage of what was going on. I didn't was not sleeping. Like, I would like literally not sleep because it was just what was being presented is so disturbing. Um, but now, Trump's in, that's died down, but kind of like as I was in the back seat, kind of just observing and not commenting, the discussion surrounding like the more libertarian anti-war side, it has changed a lot over the past, I think, like 2 years, and I don't think that's a secret. I think that's why, part of why, at least, there's a lot of infighting in conservative media. You still have, like, I think, principled people, people like Ron Paul, who are very consistent in what they believe. We should be spending more money. If we are spending taxpayer money, let's focus it back on America. Let's scale back the international presence. Very reasonable. But I don't think we can ignore the fact that, the people who are critical of the war in the Middle East, it's not always that they just are pro-peace or anti-government spending. If we're being real, there's an increasingly toxic element of that. And I've kind of seen that unfold as I was not commenting, as I'm just one of the people who's also scrolling. Um, and that's why, like, since I've been back, I haven't wanted to, if I'm being honest, if I'm being frank, and I haven't spoken about this, I haven't wanted to engage in that discourse because it's really toxic. I'm not going to lie, it's really toxic. I've seen people who I'm huge fans of it who have been nothing but nice to me, like Dave Smith, who is a libertarian, who is critical of this military intervention we're seeing. He's being called things like a dirty Jew and all of these, like, and, you know, I'm just not in the position now where I'll say it. Like, frankly, like, people like that, I may be critical of you know, what the military industrial complex does, but I'll be honest, I don't want to help you, right? I don't want to be seen taking up your banner. I don't think that the people who are trying to stop war, if again, not all, there are still good faith actors out there, but I think a lot of it has descended into, like, frankly, just anti-Americanism, which is funny because we're also like the USAID. I think we've seen how much money America gives to the rest of the world on BS stuff that's, I mean, ultimately probably going to warlords, but at least trying to help. And so for people to kind of be trying to spin it as the American government is just dropping bombs worldwide and that's all they're doing, I think that's disingenuous. I think it's kind of, I mean, I think it's a travesty that people like Laura Loomer, whether you love her or hate her, is now being called like a psyop or a foreign agent. Because I don't, of Laura Loomer, you could say a lot of things about her. I don't think you can deny that she's America first, right? She's a pit bull, but because she's like, I think it's just unfair. And I think, like I said, I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want to be associated with that. And it's too bad because I don't think it should be that way. But that's where I feel like the right wing commentary is right now when it comes to that issue. And like it's too toxic. I don't want to be part of that. And I know people are going to say, well, that's weak. That's, and you're
You don't know
probably right.
anyone. You don't know owe anyone anything. You don't have to talk about. There's so much. There's so much. I mean, look. Let's put it this way. the extent that Lauren Chen's not talking about the Middle East, it's okay because it's all Tucker Carlson talks about.
Right. And then like it's kind of ironic because I really don't think anyone's out there like, no, I need Lauren Chen's take on the Middle East. But what it is that they try to bully you. They honestly try, and that's what I mean as part of the toxicity. They try to bully you, and if you don't go along and say everything that they want, they're going to accuse you of being paid off. Like that's but that is what the conservative media space is right now. And to illustrate how crazy it is, you even have people, some people are even accusing Nick Fuentes of being paid off because he's now not extreme enough. And it's like in this ecosystem where Nick Fuentes is being accused of being an Israeli op because he's not hardline enough. That's just frankly madness. This is madness. So I would love for us to get back to a place where we can like all be calm, where we can stop, anytime someone gives a take that you think is not anti-Israel enough, you accuse them of being paid $7,000. I'm sure you've seen those posts. And that's something that is especially frustrating to me because I've been accused of being the foreign agent. And I know it's like I know a lot of these people. I know that's not the case. But you're being accused of being a sellout just for having the wrong opinions. And I've been because I'm not willing to, I guess, throw people like Dave Smith under the bus. Now, like I've even had people in my DMs calling me like a Jula. It's just I don't think I can overstate how toxic it is. Like it's
No,
honestly
you really can't. You really can't. And you're someone who has been in the mix on the hot button issues like your entire adult life. This is what you have
right.
thrown yourself into, and you can recognize the difference. Not, I think enough said about that. Lauren, is the main thing that you're focusing on now the Anathema podcast? Is that?
Yes, yes, it is actually. I'll be doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern for the foreseeable future. Twitch, X, Kick, Facebook, basically everywhere, but YouTube we're live and we clips go up on TikTok and Instagram. But yeah, you can definitely like I've said this kind of jokingly, but it's true. Like, when they conduct a search warrant, they can basically, if they find evidence of a crime, they can charge you for it, even if it's not what they were looking for. The fact that they have it, like you can basically trust I'm in some ways the cleanest social commentator you are. Like if you want to know for sure no one's paid off, it's me. But which is also frustrating because like not to get back on the Israel issue again, but it's like I literally have no one to answer to. And I can't get fired from anywhere because I've already been fired, but there are
You are
people
the
online.
freest person in America
Exactly.
right
I
now.
am I am the freest person and it's really nice, but there are still like there's an online element in the right that is still really, really committed to the belief in someone behind the scenes paying everybody off. And whether it's Israel or whether it's Russia, as a commentator, it's really frustrating to just like you don't have to listen. If you don't want to listen to me, don't. But you just saying, "Oh, you're paid off," like that's not really an argument against what I'm saying. Either way. Yeah.
And on that note, Lauren, thank you for opening your heart and culminating. And let's let's talk a little bit more when we have a chance about some of the experiences you've had on a different basis. Have a great day.
Thank you.